What's going on, guys? So I get a lot of questions when I'm live streaming from people getting into Path of Exile 2's endgame of mapping or atlas farming, and they don't really know where to go after they've completed Act 3 Cruel. So let's make sure that if this is you, you know exactly where you're at in the game. If I press U, I can open up the world map menu here. I've got Act 1, 2, and 3 normal, then I have Act 1, 2, and 3 Cruel. And I got this endgame tab. If that's where you're at, this video is for you. So let's dig in. The Ziggurat Refuge is where it all starts, so Doriani here, the NPC, he's going to be the guy that you interact with in the beginning to make sure that you complete a series of missions and quests so you can advance your character, get even more power, get interesting gear from specific bosses in the game, and this is basically the endgame loop. So Doriani or Act 3 Cruel would have provided you with like instructions to go ahead and start clearing at least 10 Waystones of tier 1 difficulty. And if you ever run out of them, by the way, you can click on Doriani, buy or sell, and just purchase the ones that you need. And you can go ahead and like change this later where you buy like 3 of a tier 1, and using a Reforging Bench, you can convert 3 tier 1 maps into a tier 2 so you can keep the map sustain going. But for this part right now, just know that he sells you some maps if you need them. Okay? So you got your Waystone, you're good to go. And you march your butt right over here to the map device, click on it, and you're going to start somewhere over here, okay? This will be where you call home. And the map device is going to be the Ziggurat location, and then from here, you're going to start running like Steam Springs or whatever your map's going to be. And as you successfully complete them, you're going to see that your map becomes like from blue becomes green. You successfully did it. And sometimes you're gonna have a bunch of strange icons on your map nodes. And to find out what that means, you could just click on the eye in the top left-hand corner, click on that, and it's gonna lock it so it doesn't go away when you navigate around the atlas. And you can read what these things do. So certain maps are gonna be irradiated, certain maps are gonna have bosses, certain maps are gonna have breach, expedition, delirium. These are all different endgame activities you as a player can choose to do in the atlas farming or endgame content of Path of Exile 2 Early Access. And so the first question comes up from a lot of people is, okay, so what am I supposed to do? This way I don't feel like I'm just navigating the atlas for no reason. Well, the game's telling you it wants you to complete some amount of each tier Waystone, and then once you've done that, you're gonna go ahead and do the next tier. And this is an infinitely scaling, I'll close this here, it's an infinitely scaling atlas that always changes. It might produce different biomes, it might have different node effects, like some are gonna be corrupted, some are gonna have ritual on them, some are not. And that's entirely something that you're gonna get and produce as you play the game, and that's natural. But what you're going to try to do is you can kind of cascade through all the different difficulties is you're eventually going to try to find your way to get to these 3 different citadels or mini bosses, ultimately leading to the Arbiter in that burning monolith, that huge structure that's sitting right over here. That's what you're going to do, okay? So you're trying to kill 3 guys to get to the boss. But while you're doing it, you may feel like your map sustain isn't there, like you're not able to continuously find Waystones of a certain tier. That might be a problem that you're having. And so how do we fix that for you? How can I give you advice now to make this hopefully as lucrative as possible, test your build's prowess, and get you through the game? Well, here's some of the things that I did when I was going through the atlas later that I didn't do when I started, and I wish that I did. First and foremost, right now, the way the economy is going inside Path of Exile 2 Early Access, Breach is really, really good. This Breach icon in Irradiated, this is kind of nice. If it had a corruption, that'd be ideal too. So you're going to try to get Breach as often as you can, but Breach is hard to survive, guys. When you first get here, it's a lot of monsters at once, and I'd recommend kind of fighting into the circle, then fighting your way out if your build can handle that. If you can't, that's okay. Just run the content that you can, but I prefer informing you to run Breach as often as you can. Breach is going to give you more currency, it's going to give you Breach splinters that you could sell for currency to buy better gear, and all sorts of things like that. Breach is ideal. If you don't like running Breach, that's totally fine. I'm just recommending it to you from like a currency value proposition. I think it'll be pretty lucrative. So if you're not going to run Breach, you could also run Ritual. Ritual gives you the ability to fight the King in the Mist, which you would have fought in the campaign. In doing so, he's the only guy in the game that'll give you the opportunity to get Ingenuity, this unique utility belt, which is going to improve the effect of your rings, which is actually kind of a powerful thing. Because if you happen to run Breach, you can get Breach rings, but we're kind of getting off into a tangent here. For the map device and where I want you to go, connect over here one more time. From the very beginning when you get here, connect your maps by running one map into another map, into another map, into another map. And then eventually you're going to hit these things called towers, lost towers. So what do you do with the lost tower? A lost tower is a node on the atlas or a map that you run and successfully complete that will then influence all the other maps around it. And an interesting thing that you might want to know about mapping is that anything that you have already run or have unsuccessfully completed cannot be affected by the influence of that tower. So if you're trying to specifically target a certain map. As an example, whatever's in range of this tower. See this big circle? You see this whenever you click on the map device in Cruel Act 3. You may not necessarily see this in your own hideout, but any maps that are within this range, okay, you're going to be able to put in this thing called a Precursor Tablet. And they're different. They have different artwork on them. They do different things. So a regular Precursor Tablet might just give you 9 maps in the range are irradiated. So what's that mean? If I press Alt over it, I can see. If I click on I over here, I see the icon irradiated, plus when a monster level, which means they drop even higher level loot when I kill higher level monsters, which is a W. Other ones could be things like Delirium Precursor Tablets. So when I complete a map, I get one little spot, I click this Precursor Tablet, I drag it in, and I hit apply, and it affects up to, whatever it says here, 6 maps in the range, 9 maps in range, 10 maps in range, whatever. And they could be Delirious, they could be Ritual, they could be Breach, whatever I want to run, whatever I choose. So I'm recommending to you, maybe check out Breach Tablets, okay? Breach is pretty good because, again, it's good XP if you can survive it. It's got really cool items that are going to make your character pretty damn strong. And generally speaking, you're going to get a lot of value out of running breaches compared to the other content in the game. But don't let me tell you what you have to do. Do what you want. It's just a video game. So, interesting thing. Let's say I ran this fortress map, right? And I failed it. Okay. And then I run it successfully. I complete it. This map is now off the table for maps that could be influenced by this tower. So just know that if you're trying to juice a map, when you hear about juicing, which we'll talk about in a minute, that's what we're referring to. Ways to specifically identify certain map nodes in the Atlas and just beef them up for more value when we want to run them in the endgame. So now that you know that towers influence map nodes around the Atlas, and you understand that the Burning Monolith is ultimately where you want to be by killing 3 guardians of all 3 different citadels, copper, iron, and stone. When you've got that, you got 1 crisis fragment that's dropped from the Guardian of the Copper, 1 crisis fragment from the Iron, and 1 crisis fragment from Iron Citadel. You got all 3. You use all 3 inside the Burning Monolith map, and then you summon the boss, and you're fighting the Arbiter. And good luck, because that's got to be like one of my biggest criticisms here. I have no problem with this, but the problem I got is when you die to one-shot mechanics that take you like days and days of farming to get to because you don't know what the fight is, you're going in blind. That's kind of frustrating. Just be aware of that, okay? If you go into these maps and you die once, the map is toast. The map benefits are gone. So a good example here is, again, if I run the Hidden Grotto here, see how it's green? I completed the mire, and I'd be going into the Hidden Grotto. Hidden Grotto should have irradiated monsters, and it should have a breach inside. That's fantastic. I go in there, I accidentally wasn't paying attention, and I die. Someone came to the door, whatever. I come back. It's going to say map failed, and it's going to look just like one of these maps, a basic map now. All the benefits of that go away. So that's kind of the deterrent or sort of the investment for you. You're going to want to run that successfully to get the benefits of what that map could have given you so long as you didn't die. That's how the map atlas generally works overall. And so now that you have a general idea about just taking a Waystone, putting it into an area, as an example, we could try, right? I've got this Sulfuric Caverns. If I want to run this, I click on Sulfuric Caverns, and I'd go back to my stash or wherever I'm keeping my maps, and I'm going to go ahead and do something like this, right? Let me go back to where I just was for you guys so we don't get lost in the sauce here. So I want to run the Sulfuric Caverns. I click on it. I would put in my Waystone of whatever tier I'm supposed to be on, and then I hit Traverse. Inside of Act 3 Cruel, or the Hideout if you're lucky enough to find one, and the Hideout icon would be something like this right here, just 2 seconds. If you happen to find these maps, you can run the Canal Hideout, right? Excuse me. 2 seconds, get you over here. This is Canal. If I happen to run the Canal Hideout and I clear it, I now have access to the Canal. And I can go run that. Alva allows you to do stuff like this. I'll show you. If you go visit Alva, she can allow you to select your hideout. So let's see right here, select the hideout. I would want to have Canal. I'm currently using Feld Hideout because I think it's the best for me. All good, but you can choose, which is pretty cool. That's how you get access to hideouts using Alva, because you cleared a map node that was a hideout. But outside of just hideouts, other cool things that you could do with your Waystones, if you were interested, is maybe you wanted to beef them up and make them a little bit more impressive so you got even more loot when you completed something that had more affixes on it. Remember, nodes or Waystones, all this stuff, it's all interconnected. So the fact that you're looking at an item in your inventory, remember this is Path of Exile, and you could turn this item into a rare item. So as an example, if I press Alt, we know that magical items in PoE 2 could have 2 affixes only, 1 prefix, 1 suffix. And I could see it as a prefix, I could see it as a suffix. Okay, so if I take this back over here to the stash and I click on my stash, go to my currency, I'm going to put this in here if I want to, excuse me, right here, and I want to toss it and make it regal. You can make maps like Waystones regal. You can make them rare. So now it can have up to 6 different affixes. So if I really like the way this is going, and it said maybe it has rarity on it, or it has high quantity of monsters or more XP, that's something that I want to run, I could totally do that. In addition, I could take this thing and I could val it. I could corrupt it, changing it, who knows how, right? And what does this do now? Now it's a tier 14, it lost a level. However, it's got Waystone drop chance of 225%. So I'll probably find other Waystones in there. Okay, cool. So not bad. Basically what I'm trying to tell you is you can alter these Waystones any way that you want, depending on how strong your character is. So if you're not really all that powerful yet, you don't have to run rare or regold Waystones. And so when should you make something rare? When should you make it like magical? Here's what I think you should do for that. I think if I'm going to be running this right now, I'm going to try to run content blue just to get through my quests, right? Complete 10 tier 1s, tier 2, tier 3. But the second that I'm like, okay, I'm really going through this content easily, very efficiently, now I'm probably going to look at that and go, can I run bosses rare? Because if I run a boss rare, the odds of that boss dropping better loot are pretty high. Another cool thing about bosses is that bosses will always drop you more Waystones. So here's a strategy you can use for farming bosses to get Waystones. The first thing I would recommend is save the Waystone tier you're trying to complete for bosses and use lower level Waystones to get to that boss. So while we're looking at the Burning Monolith here, let's say that I was back here at home and I was completing my tier 1, going to tier 2 maps. So I need to find tier 2 maps. So I use tier 1, tier 1, tier 1, tier 1, all the way through. And then eventually I find this node right here that's got a boss on it. It's a crypt. It's a crypt boss. It's irradiated. Very cool. So I would say use tier 1, tier 1, tier 1, right? Tier 1, and then bang right here. If I only had one tier 2 Waystone, I would use the tier 2 Waystone on the crypt to make sure that I'm fighting a tier 2 boss to complete my Atlas journey and quest so I can continue pushing on. And when I kill that boss, you know, fingers crossed, knock on wood, he's going to drop even more tier 2 Waystones. Okay, and then I'll use tier 1, tier 1, tier 1. I'll look around. What's the interconnections between this so I can get to another boss? And away I go. So what I'm saying is try to spend your Waystones on nodes that it matters most, unless where it doesn't, unless you have an overflow. If you have an overflow, then feel free to run the tier 2 Waystones in this example. And this would apply to things if you guys are on 7, 8, 9. Waystone quest completion, same thing. I wouldn't use my highest Waystones until I got to a boss. I use a level or 2 below, and that's going to produce the same Waystones, level 6s, level 7s, whatever that's going to be. But I would assume at some point that in doing this, you got to your hideout. So let me show you this, okay? Inside your hideout, you're going to have something called a Reforging Bench, and the Reforging Bench is pretty sweet. So if I go to my stash for a second here, I'll go to my maps. I'm going to type in, like, I don't know, tier, let's say 6. Do I have any tier 6? Tier 7s. Okay, I got a couple tier 7s here. Let's see what's up. So I've got a white one, and a rare one. Okay, cool. This is the Reforging Bench. So if I control left click and I toss all these maps in here, this is 3 tier 7 maps. If I hit Reforge, I get a tier 8 map. And you can do the same thing. So if connecting to your Atlas is like tier 1, tier 2, or whatever our example was, we're running 6s to try to get a 7 completion in our quest, you can use those overflow of 6s to make the 7 and get maybe more 7 drops, 8 drops, but guaranteed when you kill a map boss, you're going to get the highest one that you're looking for because you're going to save those for that one. Okay? And always remember at any time, Doriani is going to be selling the Waystones to you. So check him. Whenever you level up, check and see. Always check vendors whenever you level up, okay? Because they could give you something kind of nice. But Doriani is always going to sell you these maps for that certain amount of gold price. So 5,000 for one, 6,000 for a tier 2, and 9,000 for a tier 5. If that's what you're looking for, that's where you're at in the map Atlas farming so far. And so that is pretty much the general overview for how this all sort of works and give you an example of what you could use to try to get the most bang for your buck. However, there is something else we have to talk about, and that would be the Atlas skill tree. So because this is Path of Exile 2, there is a bit more nuance or a bit more flavor than just running endgame maps, right? So if you press Control U in the game, you're going to see that you have this Atlas skill tree. Now don't be like, oh my god, I can't handle it, more stuff. It's not like that. It is very fun to do, it's worth pushing, and you're going to see some value for doing so. But there absolutely is, in my opinion, something that you should do, a process, order of operations to be efficient with this. And so if you look through all the, you should go through all these nodes, by the way, have a look through them, see what they say, see what sounds good to you. But the one sort of strategy I tell most people, and the one that I followed, was this. There happens to be a triple cluster of Waystone quantity. And so it's 6% each, which gives you a grand total of 18%. So I have an 18% chance when I'm running these maps that Waystones are just going to drop. So based on the amount of points that you get as you complete your 10 Waystones of tier 1, 10 Waystones tier 2, yada yada, I would say put your points down here, get increased bountiful bloodlines, get more magic monsters in your maps, get more monsters in the maps, and then get some Waystones. Get that. If you're feeling really strong, you can get Deadly Evolution, which will increase rare and unique monsters in your maps of 1 to 2 additional modifiers, which means they should ideally be dropping better and better items for you, maybe more currency items like Divine Orbs, you know, that'd be freaking amazing, or Mirrors of Kalandra, if you're that lucky. So what I'm doing here is I'm not really looking for XP. I've built mine so that I get more rare monsters, because I kind of want better loot. I'm getting more Waystones. I want more rarity as I go. And then I'm trying out unstable energies. So the Waystones that I have a 25% more, which is multiplicative effect of prefix modifiers, or 25% more, which is again multiplicative effect of suffix modifiers when opening maps. So depending on the content that I'm running, it's going to get magnified. So it could be more rarity, could be more for the monster. I'm not really sure, right? We're going to find out when we run that, but this is the flow that I'm using. And then as you choose to run these, but whether we're doing breach or we're doing ritual, there's actually skill trees inside. So if you want to run, as an example, the King in the Mist more frequently to earn the audience of the King, then you could absolutely chart a path and get there, right? That's what you want to do. In addition, for breach, I want to run and get the twisted domain to have the highest level possible so I get the most bang for my buck. And it's no different with expedition or delirium or even getting into like bosses and stuff. So the bosses you fight are always higher level, thus dropping higher level base gear so you can have the best rolls and the best chance to get the best, right? That's how this all works. And finally, you got our big boy at the very top here, and this would be for the Arbiter if you want to farm the Arbiter for certain gear and stuff like that. Right? So this is what I'm doing. And I'd recommend, again, going for the Waystones first, then going into rarity so that when you're actually mapping, you get more currency. So for me, Waystones, rarity, then monster rares, then I just kick up top, Precursor Tablet effects into modifiers in the map themselves. And if you want to get really bougie, you can absolutely just get out of unstable energies and go into Deadly Evolution to have even stronger rares because your build might just pop off, right? And that's it. That is the general overview that I would give anybody trying to get into mapping, like what should I be doing? These are the tips that I would tell you. And if you follow these, I hope you have success with it. And maybe you're in a guild. If you're in a guild, just know that guilds can share maps. Like we're sharing maps all day long over here. So let rip and enjoy. If not, you can always use the trade site. I'll show you this over here. Have a look. Come on over. I'll show you. Available quite freely if you want to is you could just get into purchasing breach precursor tablets. So you could always make sure that whenever, if you have exalts, because exalts are exalted orbs, they're going to drop in your maps. Whenever you're running these, you could always make sure that every tower you hit generates breach events in every map node, so you get even more value. You're just looking to put a little bit of value together every time you run a map so that you could maybe make an exalted orb, or maybe take that exalt and have many exalts, because you're just getting currency or finding items that you could trade on the trade site to accumulate wealth, to get those divines, to get the best gear, that kind of thing. But at any time, if you're not naturally dropping exalts, you could use the same trade site to convert things to exalts, then use the exalts to buy the tablets, and then make those events happen and try to survive the events to get the items that you want. I really hope this helps you. It's just a quick little video on this is the general overview for the Atlas and how it works and what you should be looking for. I hope that this helps you clear it, and I can't wait to hear your success killing the Arbiter and those 3 Citadel goons. Much love, guys and gals. I'll catch you on the next one.